we have a huge network of reporters bringing us the latest updates from various constituencies across the country. But now we are joined by Mrs. Hany, diplomatic editor at Al Ahram newspaper, in order to shed more light on the developments so far throughout the day. Good to have you with us, Mrs. Hend. Thank you for coming. Now, you are a diplomatic editor, and our correspondents informed us that with the beginning of the day, there was a huge turnout that was better than the first phase of the parliamentary elections. And they said that all walks of life, people, youth, women, and men participated in the elections today. How do you see that?
I'm saying that now Egypt is launching a new phase in its history. Even we have to remember always that the starting point in any process is a most difficult point.
Yes.
So whatever problems or difficulties we're speaking about, for example, people don't know the candidates, don't know the political parties, but we have to know that this time our voice will make the difference. This time the Egyptian people have a say in their destiny. This time their voice will not be fortified or something, you know, manipulated in a certain way. So we even if we don't know the candidates, we have to acknowledge that always the starting point, the most difficult point. I cannot compare myself with 100 years democracies in other places in the world. I have to admit that this is my first trial. Of course, I cannot compare this with the one we had 2 years ago, because it was like still, it was, you know, a very fresh step after a revolution. Things were not clear enough even for the people themselves, for the Egyptian people themselves.
Yes.
The things were not so clear for them. They were actually, you know, subject to some false messages from some powers who were actually wanted to attain power by any means and to stay in power forever.
Yes.
Oh, so I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic. I believe that this parliamentary election is better than the last one, and the one that we are going to have after 5 or 4 years, according to the parliamentary period, will be better even than the one we have now.
Okay, we have Nermeen Abdurrahman from Al Mansoura to tell us more about what's going on in Mansoura Governorate or Mansoura City. Nermeen, good day to you. Nermeen, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, until we get Nermeen back on the line, because there were some reports of irregularities in Mansoura this morning regarding the campaigning and people who violated the silence today. But until we get her back on the line, let me ask you this. Our reporters, Mrs. Hend, told us that they share with you this huge feeling of optimism. There is a sense of optimism today. And that wasn't very obvious in the first stage of the parliamentary elections. How do you see that?
Well, we are optimistic because this step signifies that Egyptian people are restoring their power in the governance of Egypt.
And their confidence as well.
Of course, and their confidence. Of course, people actually, we have to acknowledge that from a governorate to another, there is some difference in the attitudes of the inhabitants, in their actually their activism, if they are activated yet to go and cast their ballot or not. But I think that a lot of people had a time to think about the whole thing from the first phase till now, and they chose to go and say their to cast their ballot.
Okay, and we have with us back from Mansoura City to tell us about what's going on there. Nermeen, can you hear us now?
Yes, Hala, I can hear you. A very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Nermeen. Now, we heard that there were some reports of irregularities in Mansoura City this morning. How far is this true?
Not irregularities to that it can affect the voting process, Hala. Some of the logistics, I may say, some of the judges who were not that much acquainted with the places in Mansoura to go there, so it was only 10 to 15 minutes late to the opening of the polling stations, which should have been opened 9 a.m. exactly. Maybe some of those committees opened at 9:15, but no more than that. Some of the irregularities, if you are talking about violating the electoral silence,
Yes.
it was some of the vans covered with photos of the candidates touring the areas in a specific in front of the polling stations, in front of the schools in which the voters are going there to cast their ballots. But these irregularities, as I said, they were very much minor, not to the extent to affect in any way the voters. To you, Hala?
What about the turnout, Nirmeen, in Mansoura today?
I was just speaking with one of the judges here, supervising one of the committees, and she said it's about 50% in her committee. And to speak about a turnout exceeding or reaching 50%, this is something which was not expected that much.
Yes.
I mean, here in the Qahliya, we as the Qahliya knew that we are going to do something. I mean, it's going to be much better turnout. Or heavy turnout in comparison to the first phase or to other governorates. But to reach 50% in one of the committees before 4 p.m., meaning before the working day, I mean, we were expecting that the flow is going to increase after 4 p.m., after the day of work. And you know, there were stories just saying or expressing how Egyptians are really in love with their country. For example, a very old man went there into the polling station, the polling committee, to cast his ballot. And he just went to the judge to tell her, would you please choose for me, because I that much, they are all youth, choose for me who can be for the best interest for Egypt in the coming parliament, who can work for the best interest of my grandchildren. Of course, she told him, I am neutral here, I am just a judge. Would you please try to choose for yourself? But both were in tears. Because both were only thinking about who should be there for the best interest of Egypt and the Egyptians.
Well, it seems that this...
Regarding the developments, if you want to know more about developments, not only in Mansoura, but in other cities in the governorate of Al-Qahliya, there were only one, a little bit bad news, that one of the judges was that much exhausted to the extent that medical staff went to him and they have given him some medications there inside the committee to help him to continue his mission or to fulfill his mission as a judge, because he didn't want to go out of the and to be replaced by another judge. Also, another thing is that the Minister of Education, Minister El-Hilali Shirbini, who is originally from Mansoura, came early in the morning today. He was very keen to come early in the morning to cast his ballot, and he was surrounded with people who wanted to know from him why that early in the morning, why you were that much keen to come that early in the morning. He said that he is very much optimistic about the parliament, and he wanted to be one of the very first voters to come and to practice this political right we all have.
Okay, well, indeed, there is some sense of optimism in this particular stage of the parliamentary elections. Nirmeen Abdurrahman from Mansoura City, the Qahliya Governorate, thank you very much for joining us. Waiting for more updates from you throughout the day. Now, back to you, Mrs. Hend. Now, as you heard our correspondent in Governorate, she said that everything is smooth there, and there is, again, this feeling of optimism. Not only that, but a turnout that exceeded the 50% so far. How do you see that?
This is very encouraging. This is a positive message for the whole world and for the Egyptian people, that we have to restore confidence in ourselves. We are on the right track. We are actually, Egypt will be a great country as it should be. I want to say that I share the feelings of the candidate who cried this morning, and the judge actually. The same feeling actually is in every home. Maybe we are not very decided to whom I'm going to my vote, but I want to share. It's my duty. This is our responsibility in defending Egypt among the challenges actually posed regionally, internationally. This is our duty. It's the duty of every Egyptian man. You have to go. You have to have your say. This is your duty to defend Egypt. As much as the army duty is to defend the Egyptian territories and Sinai, this is my duty here in my home. Yes. We have to stand strongly behind our political leadership and to get Egypt out from the currently crisis in different ways, actually. It's a responsibility and duty, I think, and it's very encouraging. What I'm saying this morning is very encouraging. Okay. Yes.
What about the expatriates vote? How do you see the of voters, or how Egyptian expats cast their votes so far?
Actually, Ambassador Hamdi Louza, Deputy Foreign Minister, actually has emphasized that there are the Egyptian actually flow to casting ballots are very encouraging, and that the percentage of in the second stage will be more than the first stage. In fact, until today morning, more than 28,000 people have casted their vote in different embassies around the world. He is actually expecting that more Egyptians are going to the ballots in the evening after their work day, because today, Sunday, is a working day in the Gulf countries. He said that the embassies in New Zealand and in Australia actually have closed their doors and started counting the votes. Things are running smoothly with no problems, except some technical details that were actually replied actually by the Ministry of Communications and so on. Everything is good.
Okay, we have with us now our correspondent Linda Abdel Latif, who is currently in Port Said City. Good day to you, Linda.
Good evening, Hala.
Linda, how's the situation now in Port Said, or particularly in the constituency where you are right now?
Well, I'm right now in Ashtumi Gamil School right here in Port Said Governorate, as you've mentioned. Well, as to the voting process or the turnout from the early morning up till that moment, well, let me tell you that from the early morning up till 2 p.m., the numbers were really good as for the Ashtoum El Gamil Primary School here in Port Said Governorate. Now, after 2 p.m., the numbers have started to decrease gradually, maybe because we were approaching the 1 hour break that started at 2:30 and was expected to end at 3:30. Now, a minute earlier and before 3:30, people were gathering in a fair number and relatively lower than the early morning, but maybe because we were still in the early minutes of the resumption of the work right here in the Ashtoum El Gamil School. Port Said Governorate. Now, I've managed to talk to some of the voters right here, and all of them are actually women, because this school only has women voters. So the demands of them were mainly, the majority was housing, better housing for the youth. They also demanded better education and better job or more job opportunities for the youth. Now, some of them also demanded, all they wanted is a better, safe and secure country or a secure governorate.
Okay, Linda, now since this is an only women constituency where you are now, did you get a chance to ask the voters how they feel about taking part as women taking part in the political process this time?
Well, yes, I did ask them about their participation as women in the 2015 parliamentary elections, and they told me that their participation is actually very important because, yes, it made a difference, as we've seen in the constitution referendum, in the presidential elections. In the first phase, the majority of the participants were women, and that is something very significant and shows how women actually have a very important role in the society. So yes, they were very keen to come in big numbers, and yes, they see that their votes make a difference.
Okay, Linda Abdelatif from Port Said, thank you very much, and waiting for more updates from throughout the day. Mrs. Hend, as you heard our correspondents now, the role of women in Egypt's political life has been very significant, especially since the 25th of January revolution and until now. Women were there. Their presence was very heavy during all the political events that took place, whether the presidential elections, the parliamentary elections, everything, they were there. And even during the revolution, they were there in Tahrir Square and in at the presidential palace in Ittihadiyya. You can see that the role of women is now very significant. You can see that women are now more aware of their importance and of their role. But the question now here is women in parliament. Do you see or do you expect more women in parliament this time?
First, I want to say that the answer about women participation and women enthusiasm is simple. Women are persistent, and actually they stick to the dream more than men. In all fields, you'll find that the woman sticks to her dream. The men, maybe this is my personal remark, yes. But actually speaking about the candidates, of course, we cannot assure that the percentage of women will be very high. We have to look first at the party lists that actually going through the elections, how they actually have ordered the names of their candidates and how many women on every list. But this is, we don't want to make this like a problem. We are now initiating a new phase. It's very hard. It's very, heavy. We have just to have our say. We have to make first sure that we have our says there. Here, we have to convey this message. Afterwards, in the future, things will sort itself out. Everything will be, more ordered. Parties will find parties more ordered. They already have acquired the experience in, for example, these elections and so on. So we can, sort things out. But at this phase, we have to stay as Egyptian people, all in one. Women, men, old people, youth, that we are here, we are standing beside our country. One thing that I want to add, speaking about what I said, that we have to support and to stand by our political leadership, but we have to have a very important remark here, observation, that this time, this election, we don't have a party of the system or a party of the government. In fact, the government is not telling us, this is my party and you should give your vote to it. Okay. We don't have a party of the system or a party of the government. But how we stand by the leadership of Egypt among the regional and the international challenges, that we have a strong government by a heavy and big participation. When we have a big participation of the Egyptian people casting their votes, then the parliament will be more stronger. That's what I mean by supporting the political leadership.
Okay.
Yes.
And we have with us now Basma Taha, our correspondent, who is currently in Shubra. Hello, Basma. Basma, can you hear us? Good day to you, Basma. Okay, it seems that again we are having a problem reaching our correspondent, but earlier Basma gave us a very optimistic overview regarding the situation. She said that the mood was very optimistic, and she said also that people talked about their aspirations regarding the new parliament. People this time seems to have high hopes and expectations from the upcoming parliament, which is a good thing, but also it's a very challenging issue. The people, the voters whom our correspondents talk to, mainly about education. They want better education and they want security and stability. Perhaps these were the two main issues that everyone talked about while casting their votes. How do you see that?
Of course, people think about their persistent needs first. The conditions of education in Egypt is not very well. The public schools are having a lot of problems, and the private schools actually are so greedy, dealing with people in a very greedy manner. So this is like the most persistent problem to all Egyptian houses and families. Of course, the security is another problem, but we have to that there is a difference in the level of security in Egypt compared with 4 years ago. I'm saying that in the last months, who have actually been subject to any attack, for example, on high roads in the night, or the highways, yes, in the night or something, or we have to admit that things are much better than before. And we are looking forward to be more better, actually. But I think that the candidates who will win in these elections, they have to put in their mind the needs of the people. Beside, of course, the national issues and so on, they have to put in mind the needs of the people, because the Egyptian people were so patient in the last years for the Egyptian to the authorities to respond to their actually questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, since Egypt witnesses on Sunday the first parliamentary elections according to the new constitution, a total of 282 seats will be up for competition in the second stage, whose voting will last for 3 days abroad and inside. 222 seats for independents and 60 seats for party-based lists. Let's take a more detailed look in the upcoming report.